Hello and welcome to Love Work Life. Late as always, Paul, or early as always, as we're trying to do 25,000 things at once. Paul's there giggling as he's usually is how do I describe it? His ability to curve anything technical has suddenly landed on my desk at 12:29 and 59 seconds. Asked me, can I send an email to somebody who can't quite answer the webinar, which I will do at some moment. Once I get an opportunity to send that across, I will get an email across to that person. But if you can hear me, please put a note in the chat room just to say that you can hear me, and welcome to this week's training academy, this week's 60-minute mentor session. Last week we had a really good feedback to the emails that was sent in. We've had some really good comments on what we've been doing. And what I'd like to say is that this week we're going to do a very similar sort of thing and go through all the questions that we've been asked by you guys and try bring some sort of sense to them and work with them. And I think there's some really, this week, and Paul's not seen all the questions as yet, we've had some really interesting questions. I think some that are very hot off everybody's lips, certainly on Paul and I have been speaking to clients. A lot of the clients are asking us these types of questions constantly now. And I think that what we'll try and find is time, if we can, to really sort of push through some of the questions that are most important. So we're going to sort of jump around a little bit, Paul, from there. And we're going to work very hard. So I'm going to work you as much as normal. So the first question is, if the 360 model has had its day, what suggestions do you have for a more productive team and collective commission scheme? And I want to sort of put that collective commission scheme to one side. We'll ask that later. I've got another question very similar to that, which is the end of the 360 recruiter, aka an outdated or unrealistic model. So let's sort of look at these as a kick-off question, and then we can start to sort of push back into the question with regards to bonus and commission.
Okay, well, whilst I'm answering this and working hard, Howard, could you get on with letting Nicola know what the link? Firstly, welcome everybody. Lovely to say hi to everyone. We've had torrential rain down here. It's literally people canoeing down the high street yesterday. So I hope you're all well and keeping dry. So yeah, let's talk about this whole sort of situation about 360-degree recruiters. And this is a bit of a hobby horse of mine. It has been for donkey's years. Because I've never really thought that the whole concept of 360-degree really works. And that's not because there aren't people out there that are incapable of doing it. I mean, I would consider myself as a 360-degree recruiter. I was for many years. And I, with all due modesty, I was pretty damn good at it. But I think looking back, if I think about the staff turnover back in my days, working in offices, it was high. Most people couldn't make the grade as a 360-degree recruiter. And, I think we talk today about how hard it is to find people to actually do it, but the reality has always been hard. And I think that as we've been saying endlessly over the last 4 or 5 months, the market is changing in a way that is, even at this stage, beyond our understanding. It's going to change enormously. So the truth is that, if we found and we were discovering it very difficult to find 360-degree recruiters prior to the lockdown, it's going to be even more challenging to do that post-lockdown. And I think that when we talk about this, and Howard and I often refer to this as the Ford Model T situation, you don't get everybody trying to build a car from scratch. So I think it's about really understanding what the key drivers for successful businesses are going to be as we start moving into work mode and back in the office mode again. And for me, that is going to come down to some very important points. I think that we are clearly looking for people in our business and those that can enter our business who have the ability to develop relationships, deep, if you like, relationships, trusted advisor relationships with our clients and indeed with candidates. And those are the people that are going to be able to cement the opportunities for the business that will take you beyond contingent recruitment into that zone that we've been referring to as retained and exclusive business. Behind those guys, if that's the expression, you are going to be looking for, and you already have them in many instances, resources. You're going to be looking for people that can do research. You're going to be looking for people who are brilliant with candidates, can deal with candidate care, prepping people for interviews, how to succeed in interviews, making sure that when they're offered roles, that we care for them during their notice periods, ensuring that they sign and they receive their standard contracts of employment from their new employees, that when they're settling in to a new company during that very important 12-week induction early onboarding process, that we're involved still with those candidates, candidate care people. We're going to be looking for people who are great at marketing. Clearly, every business these days needs marketing support, regardless of the size. Back in my day, 360 recruitment also meant writing our own copy for advertising. So when you think about the scope of the skill sets that were required or are still required from 360-degree recruiters, really is it any wonder that most people can't do it? And that those people that are 360-degree recruiters tend to lean into the things that they do and enjoy doing the most. So what we call proclivities, the things that they have a tendency to want to do because they're good at it, and they will ignore other things within their remit that they actually would rather not do. I don't believe in 360-degree recruiting, and there are people here that may be screaming at me. I've never done it. I've never believed in it. Rather, I think it's extremely difficult. Far better to find people that had strengths in the areas that we need them to have strengths in, and build a cohesive team. As we've said many times, not everybody can score goals. Somebody has to be the goalkeeper. Somebody has to be the fullback, and so on. And I think, I absolutely believe that. I think that we are looking for a range of different skill sets, and you have people already in your businesses that have a lot of those skill sets but don't have all of them. My best advice: stop looking for something that's very hard to find. If you find one, great, but give up trying too hard, because they just don't exist in great numbers. I'll just add that final sentence.
I think it's a very interesting question. I think we were on one of the REC webinars and we were asked a very, very similar question. And I think, what we're saying is that 360 has always been an issue for recruitment. And I think the issue is when you start to think about 360, look at the attrition in recruitment, look at the amount of people that drop out of recruitment. And what we talk about is, are the processes right when we actually recruit the right people? And therefore, are we putting the right people into the right jobs? Or are we expecting, as we said there, that we expect everyone to build the whole car, the total car, right from scratch to the car leaving the factory? And I think that day has certainly sailed. And what we should be thinking about is the amount of people that have probably left our businesses who have really good skills. They may have been really great at opening doors, but not particularly great at finding candidates. They may have been absolutely poor at opening doors, but brilliant at finding candidates. You might have people who are good at finding candidates and great at managing clients, but not good at new business. So what it's about, I think, from my point of view, is finding people who have their strengths engaged in the right area. And once you start engaging people's strengths into the right area, what you find is that you get a far more productive consultant, somebody who's far happier in their job. And the fact that you're providing someone with a far happier in working environment, their results start to certainly escalate and get better, but also their service they give to their clients becomes far more improved. So maybe we've got to start to think about our model and how our model changes in the modern world. Because if we're talking about improving our service to our clients, then we've got to start to think about how we can actually get our clients, to work with us and feel that value. And that value is about having specialist people working specialist parts of the role. It's interesting when I speak to a lot of consultants, a lot of business owners, who are very worried about their major and their head consultants leaving and starting their own job. And again, we've talked a little bit about that last week, is that, train them so well that if they left, they could start up. But train them and treat them so well that they don't want to leave in the first place is what we should be really thinking about. But if we actually create that model, 360 model, where you've got 3 or 4 people speaking to your client constantly, then guess what? When your consultant leaves, you've still got a very high touch point relationship with your client. So you're also safeguarding your client, where 360 is a very, very singular module, and therefore your consultant has basically all the control. So I think we've got to think about it in that way. There are lots of ways that whether it be a 360, 120, 180 model, that we can do the right things to make sure we give the client and the candidate a better service. The second part of that question, Paul, was about commission.
Yeah.
And so it was, do you have a more productive team and collective commission structure? And then there were other comments about the best way to work out an acceptable commissions bonus plan for consultants, and bonus payments, how to manage the expectations during lockdown.
I mean, this is a really tough question. I mean, I don't often sit on the fence. So I think it's a conversation that is different for different businesses. So, I mean, look, you guys out there, and I'm one of them, I was a top performing consultant in my day, you know, and I worked in offices, as you will have done, with people that weren't at my level or couldn't be bothered, frankly. And to be honest, if I'd have been in that situation where my revenues were being shared by others and other people were benefiting from a bonus perspective from my effort, but I wasn't getting anything reciprocal because they weren't pushing and pulling as hard as I was, I'd have resented that pretty fast, to be honest. And I know that when I've had these conversations in the past with companies, we've had that discussion about the high billers and the average to poor performers. You know, the view has always been that the high performers will get resentful if other people aren't pulling their weight. Now, you can reverse that and you can say, well, if you put it into place, then surely that puts pressure on the people that aren't pulling their fingers out to really rise and improve themselves. Because after all, if they're feeling the resentment, they're feeling the pressure from people around them, either they're going to step up or they're going to step away. They're going to leave. So I guess there's kind of two sides to the coin. I guess my position on this is probably a bit of a hybrid answer, in that I genuinely think that people should get most of their bonus from their own personal efforts, because I think that's what we need. People should be incentivized to perform well if they're going to get in early and work hard, really hard, work late, especially during tough times. Then if they do well, they need to get the reward for that effort. But I think a percentage of their bonuses should come from, you can call it profit share if you wish. You can call it team bonus if you wish. So you can certainly mix and match. Back in my day at Office Angels, for example, when we were owned by Adecco were always putting me as the MD, the CEO, under pressure to change our bonus plans within our offices. And what they wanted to do was they wanted me to put the office managers on bottom line profit bonus. My view about that at the time was that I didn't agree with it, because I had people that were managing offices that were unquestionably great salespeople. They were great customer relationship people. And I didn't want them to be too concerned about controlling costs. In fact, actually, I wanted them to be spending money on client entertainment. I wanted to be spending it on petrol, diesel, going to see clients. I wanted them to be spending more on advertising, more on doing seminars and all those things that I knew were important to generate client base. And I knew that if we put those guys in a position where they started to count the pennies on the costs, they'd stop spending in certain areas that I knew medium to long term would benefit their business. I wanted them purely focused on making placements, getting temp numbers, contractor numbers out, because that's what I'd employed them to do. I had a whole floor full of accountants and finance staff and the area and regional managers and directors and me who were focusing on things other than pure sales. We were looking at costs and so forth. I wanted those guys purely focused in that area. Adecco weren't too pleased with me about it, but I had a business that was knocking spots off virtually every other one of their organizations globally. So they left me alone. I think, again, this comes back to what kind of people have you got in your business? What is it that drives them and generates the revenues for your company? A blend for me is probably the right answer. Perhaps 2/3 of the bonus comes directly from their own income, and a third relates to the overall benefit of the office, which should produce a level of teamwork and cooperation between people.
So I think it's interesting. I echo all of those comments, and I think we've always talked about, for every pound that comes into the business, a third should go to the consultant, a third should go for costs, and a third should go for profit to your business. So when you start to look at that third that goes to the consultant, that includes salary, that includes commission, and that includes NI. So you've got to start to think about, when you create a plan, where's it fall within that model? Because you don't want to be overpaying, but you also don't want to be underpaying as well. And I think in this modern world, as we start to sort of come out of lockdown, and if we do change from being 360 to a more rounded model, then really what we should be doing is having part paid for based on what Paul said there on your own performance, and then some on a team performance and some on a business performance. Because if you did go to that 120 style model, then everyone becomes reliant on everybody else. It almost becomes a bit of a symbiotic sort of model where you, the salesperson, brings in a requirement, the researcher has to find candidates to find that client, and then the person in the middle that's sort of the resource type person, they're then interviewing the candidate and going through with the client through the relationship of that recruitment process. So you tend to find that everyone's then working hand in glove with everybody else. So everybody becomes sort of reliant on each other, and you create a far more collaborative and driven team where that lone wolf doesn't really succeed because they're relying on other people. So you've got to start to think about what you want and what your people genuinely can drive for you. But I think as we come out of lockdown, it should be all hands to the pump, and it should be about the best people filling the jobs for you. And therefore, you've got to look at a commission structure or a bonus plan that works in that way. And we've got to be very open about that when we talk to people, that if you're going to put a commission plan in place, you can't put one in for one person, one in for another person, one in for another person. It has to be the same right across, uniform across the board, based on their, I suppose, input to the business and where they lie. And you can sort of grade that by yourself. Is it more important that you get a person out there opening new clients, or is it more important you have people out there generating candidates, or is it more important you have great people who give great service to your clients and delivering those recruitment services? I feel that each person has their own merits along the lines, and how you weigh that merit and how you weight those merits is important to you as well.
Howard, I'm just going to throw another sort of point in here. And, I often say that bonus plans drive behaviors. It's a fact. If you want people to behave in a certain way in your business, then you compose and you compile a commission or bonus plan that drives certain behaviors. So, for example, if you believe that it's incredibly important for your business and your people to be consistently in front of clients, so we're talking client meetings, and you have an element of your bonus plan that is attached to that, and you pay that monthly or quarterly, that will drive a behavior. So again, I refer back to my early days at Office Angels when we said that we wanted to be the most expensive recruitment business of our kind in the country because we were providing a better quality service. That was our perspective. We're going to charge more. We're going to offer more. We're going to be a premium brand. And in order to be able to charge more, you obviously have to make sure that you deliver on your promise. If you're paying a little bit extra for us, you are going to be more than satisfied with the service you receive, to the extent that you will believe as a client and indeed experience the fact that it's a much better journey working with us than anybody else. So you'll pay a little bit extra for that. We were successful with that concept. One of the things we did in the bonus plan with the temps consultants was quarterly, we gave them a target on their margin. We said, here's your margin target, £3.30 an hour average. If you hit that number on average over the previous 3 months or go above it, you get X amount paid to you in additional bonus. And you can't believe how much of an impact that had on the temps consultants, to the extent that when we won big contracts that would have meant that our margins were lower in exchange for the volume, we had a problem getting the offices to supply temps to those clients, because the mindset was, well, hang on, if I start supplying temps at lower margin, it's going to impact my quarterly bonus. Took us a long time to explain to people, okay, that is true, but the volume you're going to get means that you're going to make more money personally because you're going to get more temps out. But that was the mindset. The mindset was, we're absolutely focused. Now, the point I would make again is that if you believe there are certain drivers in your business that are extremely important to you, devise a bonus plan that rewards. So if you're looking for outstanding feedback from your clients quarterly, you say, we're going to have a performance review every quarter, and in that performance review, I want you to produce half a dozen or 10 great references or referrals from clients and candidates. And if you score on average 80% or above, I will reward you with X amount of bonus. You would be amazed at how much feedback you get from clients and candidates. So I think understand the drivers that are important for your business, step back from that, and then think through your bonus plan. It shouldn't be merely attached to revenue. There should be other things that I think you reward people on that will ultimately develop and sustain and produce additional revenues for your business. Make it more than one dimensional going forward.
I think rather than getting sort of into the minutiae of that sort of conversation, which we could do for quite a long time,
yeah.
I think what you're saying there is absolutely right, that we've got to start to think about what drives people within our business and then what drives behaviors within our business. So if it's all about the money, then you'll drive behaviors that it's all about the money. If it's all about service, then you'll drive behaviors that's all about the service. A nice blended approach of those would be really good. But what you've got to sort of remember is got to make sure that your commission plan doesn't overpay, because if you start to overpay, then it starts to take out of your profit, because obviously your costs are your costs and your costs are fixed. So always model your commission plan heavily to make sure you know that it actually works. So moving on, because obviously we're 2 questions in really, about 5 or 6 questions in there. We've got an awful lot to cover today. Here's a very quick question. What do you see the opportunities and priorities for Q4 of this year?
Wow, there's a question. Well, look, I think nobody's got a crystal ball. So, I mean, I can take a pessimistic view if you want me to, and say that we know that the National Health Service are planning for a potential spike again. As everybody knows, it's in the news, it's been constant. I'm not being a doom and gloom merchant. There's a potential for another spike, as we know, once we get into the winter months again. So they're preparing for October, November, December. Now, I hope that's wrong, and I think that there's a reasonable chance it will be. But we also know already that the tactic won't be to close the country down, but to close down certain districts. Now, right now, we're in the summer, although you wouldn't believe it looking out the window at the moment. And we're going to move into September, which is traditionally a very important period for us. I think, and I was having this conversation with one of my clients just before we got onto the webinar, plan for the worst and hope for the best, which means in this case, we need to stockpile. We've got a couple of months, maybe 2.5 months to really go for it, really smash it, get those jobs on and really build a decent level of funding, get those placements made, get the contractors out, get the temps out, because God forbid we hit another spike at the end of the year and things close down again, and we can't say it won't, then you're going to need that money that you've made in terms of sustaining your working capital and placements ready to start. So I would say live for the moment. We've got an opportunity at the moment. It's much better than in August than it was in July. July was better than June, and we're anticipating September will be even better than August. I think go for it now. Get your people up for it. Make them aware of the urgency. It's very hard to get back to the question, to plan in great detail for what may or may not happen in this fourth quarter.
I think it's an interesting sort of question that when you start to look at each company, it's very different. You may have a company that has not had hardly any requirements on in the last 20 odd weeks, and you have some that will be absolutely inundated in requirements. So it depends on each individual company's statement. So I'll put that into 2 areas. If you're below hitting your break-even point, your drive should really be to hit break even plus 20%. Yeah. So you get 20% growth constantly, week in, week out. And I'll be looking at that opportunities, okay, to say, right, which clients are going to provide those type of opportunities to you, because they're the type of clients that you need to prioritize and then drive into those clients, understanding what's going on straight away. So your priorities need to be to hit break even plus 20%. Your opportunities, where are you going to find the clients that can do that? If you're then looking at a client's, you're looking at a business that is above break even already, then it's all about recouping the loss that we've made during the last 20 weeks. So you've got to start to think what your priority is again then. And your priority once again will be your clients. What clients can you generate the income out of to make the recovery a lot quicker. So it's understanding your client base. So to me, the priorities is to understand your client base far better than before, and to ensure that you can sell better services to your clients. And we've spoken before on these webinars about selling RPO type services, selling MSP type services, etc., etc., etc. We've got to start to think about what a client requires from us now and how we can cure their problems now. And if we can start to work on what their problems are now, and then start to have a long-term view of their recruitment strategy rather than our continual sort of distressed view of their recruitment strategy, i.e. we look at it on the day that they need it, then we can start to help the client plan themselves. So our priorities have to be around the client and what the client can provide to us. It is going to be a client's market. So therefore, if we can work more hand in glove with the client, then we'll become more productive from the client, and from our own point of view, that will give us more revenue coming through the line. So to me, it's a very, very simple thing. Make sure you're above break even. And to get above break even, you have to prioritize your opportunities by prioritizing the clients that will bill for you. If you're above break even, it's the same priorities. It doesn't change. So to look at that, the next question was done. We've been working on a 6-week rolling business plan. What's your advice moving forward? And I think my advice on that, Paul, is very simple. We carry on working on those 6 weeks rolling plans, and I tend to bring those a little bit closer. I'd be having either a 4-week rolling plan, so a monthly rolling plan. And we need to be sort of reviewing that plan on a very regular basis. And we need to start to have, I always think that you've got your worst case scenario, what's likely to happen, and your best case scenario in your business plan. And your plan will be split into 2 areas. You'll have your sales forecast and your cash flow, and your cash flow. So your cash flow is what's coming through your business. You can see what's going on. So are you afloat? Are you making the right type of money? And in your sales forecast, again, it should be what's likely to come into your business. And again, you have best, middle, and worst case scenarios planned all the time, so you know exactly where you are. And then it goes back to the fact, there's a question we've just had about what you prioritize in your business. So you've got to make sure your processes are working all the time. So if you're selling quite a lot at this moment in time, but your back office processes are slowing down cash flow, then you've got to really to prioritize your back office to get cash flow moving. If you're not making sales, you've got to prioritize your salespeople to get out and really start to look at your current client base, your client base that's buying from you, and drive into that client base, and then start to look at what else you can sell into that client base to expand your footprint in that client base, and then start to look at your lapsed clients, your dead clients, and new clients, and how you can bring in there. So I think your rolling 6-week plan needs to continue. I will keep running it from there, because it is emergency running of a business, not standard running of a business, and therefore you need to be on top of every single movement of your business, week in, week out, day in, day out.
Listen, I think I agree with everything you said, Howard. I think, we're still in the war room. This is daily stuff. None of us, and we all know this, none of us can afford to be even remotely relaxed or complacent. It's back to the earlier question about how do we plan for the final quarter. So, I've been hearing people have been saying to me of late, we're feeling a bit weary. And I get that, it's been really tough over the last 4 or 5 months for everybody. I do think, though, that we've got to be, as leaders, talking to our people about having the right positive mindset. So, we kick weary out the door. We've got to get into hyper energy now, because we have this period of time. We're living for the now, back to the point about planning weekly, 6 weekly, and we've got to smash it every single day. There's no discussion around lack of energy or feeling negative. We as leaders have got to drive that hyper energy into our businesses through our own vibe, our own level of energy, and we've got to get everybody going for it. There can't be any negative talk in the organization. And I think that's to the point. We are in this kind of situation, and we just got to get out there with our boxing gloves on every single day and punch, punch, punch. No time for thinking about the future. We've got to live for the day.
So I think, the next question is a very interesting question again, and I think this will sort of help sort of drive our thought about what you've just talked about mindset of your staff, mindset of yourself, and the cumulative, if I could say the word today.
Easy for you to say that.
Yeah, hard for you to understand. If you start to look at that cumulative effect of how mindset affects a business, then you can start to see what's going on. So the next question is, what should we be expecting performance-wise for consultants as we reach the end of the year, and how do we plan for 2021? And then the next one is sort of, well, let's answer that question, because the next question is slightly different, and we'll try and answer that one performance-wise.
So I think it's a very interesting question, because, if you're, I was talking earlier to a client, we've been really pushing over the last 3 months this whole exclusivity retained piece. We're using, I won't mention the brand name, but we're using one of the video platforms to connect with clients, to send video clips to clients about candidates, to get the clients to promote their jobs to the candidates. You know which ones I'm talking about, which video platforms. And it's working. We've been looking at the stats on the amount of jobs we're taking to the placements made. In other words, the conversion ratios. And there are stark contrasts already apparent with the amount of conversions that we're seeing. So I'm going to come back to the question, what do we expect from people? I think it comes down to what models are you going to be driving in your business? If you're going to be looking at purely contingent business, which was for most recruitment businesses the case pre-COVID, then you cannot genuinely expect to see the same either level of roles coming in or the same level of conversion as we start moving forward, because we're moving into a different world. If, on the other hand, you're driving your business forward in different ways, using technology, using artificial intelligence, really getting in front of clients and converting organizations you work with on a contingent basis into retained and exclusive opportunities, I think that will have a big bearing on your target setting, because even though you'll have fewer roles potentially to work on, your conversion rate will be higher. In other words, fewer jobs, but you could actually be making more money. So I think the answer to the question really lies in, what is your business strategy? How are you going to go forward? If it's the same as you were pre-COVID, then you're going to have to look at resetting, as we've been talking about, forecasting, resetting your targets for each individual. If, on the other hand, you're being bold and courageous and you're beginning to change your model, then I think you can be much more optimistic about the level of revenue you're going to be bringing in.
So it's interesting, isn't it? Expectations on your consultants now. So let's think consultants have been off for 20 weeks. That's 148, 150 days. Okay. So if you start to think about, someone coming back from injury, or, your car being, not driven for 20 odd, that type length of time, is the battery right, etc. Are the tires pumped up? You've got to do a fair amount of maintenance work on people to get their performance to where you wish it to be. So I think in Q3, end of Q3 and Q4, what expectations should we be, gaining from our consultants is all about what are we putting into them, how are we trying to help them get back onto the line, how are we trying to get them back up to where they were billing before. So I'd set a goal, and my goal would be, look at what you were billing prior to that on average per head, and that's what I'd be saying, right, that is where we need to get to by the end of the year. And I'd be driving that as a performance target, so everyone has to drive to where they were prior to lockdown. Now, that might mean that some people are going to fall short and some people might go above that, but it's about the company average, about where you expect your consultants to be across the board. They have to have some target to go at. Now, it might be that you've set everyone a financial target. To me, I think that's rather harsh at this time. So to me, it's about a productivity target. So how many clients are you working with at the moment? How many new clients are you working with? What is your CV to interview ratio? What's your placement, your job to placement ratio, etc.? And as Paul said, if you can drive that up and improve your stats, then you might not need as much work as before. It's also an opportunity, as every session is, to jettison clients that mess you about, because you need to be, prioritize the workload that you have. So when we start to look at clients, look at consultants, what generally happens when I start to see KPIs is consultants hide behind KPIs sometimes. And what I mean by that, if your KPI is to make 2 hours on a call every single day, then that's easy to do. I can ring my mother and I'm sure she'd be happy to talk to me for 2 hours. And I hit that call number. Okay. But the other side is hitting jobs. A lot of consultants hide behind poorly qualified jobs with very little commitment from the client. And the candidate knows that, and the consultant knows that. But what's actually happening to the consultant is that they are hiding behind your KPI. So we need to remove that KPI and start to look at the ratios, because the ratios then start to drive performance. If you then link that back to your commission plan, then you will definitely start to drive performance from there. So my expectations is at the end of the year, you've got to start to think about the question beforehand with regards to, billings per year, okay, and what you expect from your company. And we're talking about hitting break even plus 20% and then start to grow. Then we start to think about the same things for our consultants, because they've got to hit that 20% plus on break even and then start to grow again. So we start to think about how we're going to do that. So there's an opportunity here to again look at all your procedures within your business, review those procedures, and that includes your KPIs, and make sure your KPIs are what I would call motivating and not what I would class as pitter, which is a pain for the consultant. So you've got to start to think, does it promote that positivity? Do people see those KPIs as something that actually drives them, or do they see them as something that is a stick to beat them with? So we've got to start to think about what we're actually putting in front of our consultants to make sure we are driving our consultants in the right way and not just driving them out of the business.
So H, just to pick up on a point you've been making, and I mean, all of the guys out there will understand this. I remember years ago doing a lot of work for Manpower, and I was out with one of their regional directors, and we went into an office in the Midlands, which wasn't performing terribly well on perms, and they had a big whiteboard, and there must have been 40 jobs on the whiteboard, maybe more, I can't remember, but they were just not converting any. And I literally sat there with the manager and challenged every single role and rubbed them out. The ones that were clearly not very well qualified. We ended up, I think, with about 5 jobs out of God knows how many. About a tenth, I think, that were on that board that they could actually convert. The rest was a complete smokescreen and waste of ink. And I think that, it's just an example. I mean, every one of the people listening will know that. It's very easy to hide behind this smokescreen of vacancies that we will never convert. So let's be very clear about, what we've actually got on the board that is meaningful. And I think it's down to us as leaders to be challenging constantly, so that we know precisely what it is that's going to convert, rather than just having a dizzying number of roles on a board that will actually mean absolutely nothing at the end of the day. And every one of the people listening understands that very clearly.
I think it's, a similar sort of story was I had a consultant that I took over a company, and they had no data, they had no CRM. I ended up putting a CRM in, and I said, give me 6 months on data, and then I'll be able to help you actually improve your recruitment sales. And this consultant would come to me every month and say, right, I'm going to bill 70, 80K every month. And I'd be starting to look at him and sort of really question what he's billing. And every month he was billing about 5 or 6K at the end of each month. When it came to month 6, I could then start to say, this client does this client does this is the trend on this client, this is the trend on this client, this is your ratio of job to placement with this client, etc. And all of a sudden he could start to see where the big holes in his recruitment were, because he was hiding behind KPIs and hiding behind the old regime that had been in the business on how to sort of make himself look good. I've got to come in with a really good pipeline. Whether he could deliver that pipeline or not was immaterial. They were just interested in the pipeline. I'm interested in cold hard cash. It's recession time, so it's cash that is king, and therefore if they're hiding, okay, you need to flush them out really quickly. The next question is, should we hire experienced or inexperienced recruitment consultants during the recession?
Well, this, I think, comes right back to the previous question we were talking about with 360-degree recruiters. So, I think you've got to understand what kind of qualities and skill sets are you now looking for in this new world of work. And it doesn't necessarily follow that you have to have experienced people. If you are looking for people to do research or resourcing, there's relatively easy ways to find those kind of people, I think. If you're looking for really good, top quality relationship managers, people that can develop great relationships with clients, or you're looking for business development people who are very comfortable getting meetings, going out and seeing organizations or virtual meetings, then I think that, again, you can find those outside of our industry sector. I was on a 2-hour conference call with a client this morning, and we had this very same discussion around the qualities that we're looking for going forward in people. And I think that there's an awful lot of recruitment consultants that are out there right now looking for jobs. I think everybody's aware of the number of redundancies that are being made in our industry. It's not surprising. We knew it would happen. It's reflective of the number of redundancies pro rata that we're seeing with our customers. And there are a lot of people out there that you might want to bring into your business or experience, but there'll be quite a number that you probably are not particularly keen to have on board. So I've never been one, frankly, that believes that you have to have people with recruitment experience because, I mean, we've got this expression, I've been using it for donkey's years, retreads. They've been around the block so many times, like old tire, they're shredding. You can see it on their CVs. Every 18 months they go to a different recruitment business. Lo and behold, 18 months, 2 years later, they go to another recruitment company. They've never been sacked, but they've always jumped just before they were pushed. And there are an awful lot of people on the market that you will see just like that. And we used to have, and I still use this adage, as a view in our industry sector, unfortunately, that anybody that's worked in recruitment can generally get another job. And, if you lean them up against the mirror and ask them to breathe, if the mirror mists over, you take them on. They're live, they've got blood coursing through their veins. And just because they've got recruitment experience, we employ them. It's complete nonsense, obviously. We should be looking for people with the right skill sets, regardless of whether they've got experience in our industry or not. If they've got transferable skills, and I've said this 100,000 times, and I'm not denigrating the industry I adore, and I've been working in for 43 years, but the bottom line is, folks, we don't work in a rocket science industry. We work in an industry where people buy people. It's always been about relationships. For 40 odd years, I've worked in this industry. That's what it's about. We're looking for people with high emotional intelligence, people who can develop trust, who can develop great relationships with their clients and candidates. And you can find people like that in a whole range of different industry sectors. They don't have to have recruitment experience. So I'm of the opinion that it's a mixture. I think if you find people with the right attributes who've worked in recruitment, brilliant, bring them in, fantastic, of course. But let's not rule out people with brilliant skill sets who would love to work in our industry, and with some coaching and some development from you will turn out to be absolute star employees within the next 12 to 18 months.
I think this question, I echo everything you say then. I think this question to me is a slightly different sort of view of this question. It's not whether we hire experienced or inexperienced recruiters. We should be doing both. Yep. It's the processes that we use to hire these people. If you've got a high attrition rate, and as you said, you've been hiring lots of retreads, then you need to look at your recruitment process, because it's your recruitment process that's flawed, not the retread that's flawed. We know that person's flawed, but we still take that person on. But our recruitment process is they're hiring on skills, and we think he's got great skills, when yet we find them on later on behaviors, or the fact that the behaviors aren't right and they haven't got skills. So there has to be a reason why they haven't succeeded anywhere else. And so why are you going to be any different from that? So I think those sort of things sort of come in recession. You've got to start to think about, for every pound you invest, what your return on investment is, because that's really important. So very quickly sort of moving on to a next question. I think this question is a really interesting question, and I think there's one or two people that might be thinking along these lines. Okay, what's the best way forward to prepare to support somebody to potentially take over the running of your business? Now, when reading this question, to me, it's a very simple thing, is that whether you are looking to MBO your business, sell your business, etc., it's all about your business strategy. If you've got a business strategy that says, here's my 5-year plan, and your plan then finishes in 5 years' time, you have a very defined strategy, and therefore your mindset is very defined, and you're defined on that end date. But guess what? You project that onto all your staff, and all your staff have that projected end date as well. And therefore, if you hit that milestone of whatever it is you want to turn over within 5 years, and maybe get the business to a place where you can sell it or someone take over the business, then guess what? Your staff start to lose momentum because they've hit that goal and they've hit that target. So what you need to create is an infinite plan, where one of the milestones is, here's a date when someone could potentially take over the business. And then you start to do the same things. It's about developing the right person and finding the right person. And sometimes that's not your biggest biller. Sometimes that's not your best biller. Sometimes that might be somebody that has to come in from an external point of view and be appointed to do that. You have to find somebody that's going to drive your business forward in the same manner that you would want to drive that business forward. You have to then set defined goals for that person to achieve, so they know exactly what is on the table for them as and when they hit and achieve those goals. So it's important that if you're looking to prepare someone to take over the business, you find the right person. So therefore, looking at their behavioral traits and looking at their management capability is really important. You also got to think about what your business looks like. Is that person going to take your business and move it? And that, when you have to start to think about, is to take over your business. What is the reason? Is it you want to step away from the business? You want an easier life? What do you want this person to actually do? And then again, you define that job spec and find the right person to deliver those things to you.
So Howard, I mean, I was brought up in businesses that were absolutely all about developing people to step up. We created incentives for people to constantly be climbing the ladder. Yes, it was, these were tough environments. There were, for every role that came up, there were any number of people pushing to acquire that opportunity. But, the end result was that the owners wanted to make themselves redundant in the nicest way. And I've always said, in every business I work in, to every owner, you want to be in a place where ultimately you can go off for 3-6 months, enjoy yourself, and not worry about the business, and know that it's working at least as well in your absence, perhaps even better than if you were there. And I think if that's your ultimate aim, then you're developing a great company. I've always taken the view, certainly in the businesses I managed, that I wanted people to have my job, and I was actively involved in helping them to achieve that, because I just always had a personal view that I didn't want to be doing the job I was doing forever and a day. I always wanted to challenge myself and move forward, whether that meant moving to the next level or selling a business. I'd never seen, I still don't see, that the role you have is forever. Why would you want that? Life's very short. We should be constantly wanting to evolve, to take on new challenges, to be stretched. That's the joy of being alive, for me anyway. And I'm very keen to look for attributes and abilities in people around me and develop them, put time and energy into training them, coaching them, giving them a level of empowerment, giving them responsibility and ownership, allowing them to make mistakes, rewarding them for great work, encouraging them to be innovative, come up with ideas. And I'm that kind of boss. I want them to develop. I want them to have my job. And I think, in a way, and I obviously there are times you have to go outside and bring people into your business, but I always saw that as almost a failure. That given the amount of people I had in my business, if I had to bring somebody from the outside in, that somehow I'd found, because surely I had people in my company that could be developed. And I think back to your point, Howard, we're looking, if you want people to take over from you, you're not always looking for the highest biller. That's not what it's about necessarily. You're looking for leaders. You're looking for people that have got the attitude I've just described. You're looking for people that are capable of looking at balance sheets and actually enjoy all the elements of running a business, not just placing people in jobs. And I think that this isn't an overnight thing anyway. You don't suddenly wake up one morning and think, I'm going to make that guy Howard my replacement next week. I mean, you're planning for this day over years. So you've got ample time to look for people in your business and develop those guys. And I'm going to use the word people as a plural, not just placing all your bets on one person. And you're going to be able to establish and develop those people. And if you haven't got those guys, then absolutely, as Howard says, you've got to look outside and bring people in, but you need years to plan for this. In the ideal world, if you're looking to get rid of your business at some point, an MBO is the perfect scenario. It's a fantastic way of divesting yourself of a business to people you know and love and trust, who are going to keep those ideals, those values and behaviors going in your absence when you move on to other things, or you move on, you sell some of your shares, you retain some shares, or whatever your exit looks like. You've placed your great business in the hands of people that you know will do brilliant things for the people left behind and for your current clients.
I think it's a very simplistic thing, isn't it? Your comment there about making yourself redundant is really important, that you've got to find the right person with the right skills and the right ability to do that. And they have to love the business just as much as you love the business to take that forward. And I think that's the problem, is that we look at people that we just think are the best billers in the marketplace and put them in a position, and really they're not the best managers. You have to have a leader that inspires people and drives people forward. Otherwise, you're going to struggle to actually get that person to do what you want them to do at the end of the day. So it's a big question, and there's an interesting sort of answer to the end. So to move on, we've got 10 minutes left, and there's quite still lots and lots of questions. I want to ask a very, very quick question, Paul, and I think you'll like this question. This question, I'm going to mention the person that asked the question. This came from Dave Barrett, and he was very interested to know is why have Arsenal paid Willian 220k when he can't play football?
Well, I might add, this comes from a Leyton Orient supporter, so let's be very clear about that point. Okay. As much as I love Leyton Orient, I'm not going to answer the question.
So let's move on. Let's move on then. Okay. So the next question is, having succeeded through the last recession, what would be the single most important piece of advice that you could give anybody?
Oh, gosh. Well, firstly, I think it's about, you've got to have belief, you know? I mean, I think that positive thinking, it sounds such a cliche, but positive thinking is so important. You know, I believe very firmly that even during a recessionary climate, you can build great businesses. You know, it's never been about things beyond your control. Focus on the things you can control. We've talked endlessly about developing your people, getting closer to clients, looking for exclusivity, retained business, getting rid of business that's rubbish business, that's low margin business, where you're treated badly as a supplier. It's making key decisions, and it's being extremely upbeat about where you can go. You've got to be, as a leader, visionary. You've got to be courageous. You've got to be upbeat and positive all of the time. And that very positive energy has fantastic end results. And I think that, the thing that I know about recessions, the thing I know about any crisis, is that you should have limited focus and concern about the things you cannot control. What's the point in worrying about things you can't control? Focus all your energies on the things you can control: your client relationships, your people, your candidates, your temporary or contract staff, the strategies that are going to develop your business. Focus your energy where you can mold your future. For me, that's important. It's not just about recessionary climates, it's about all times. But I genuinely think that if you have that very positive energy, you believe, people will follow you. And we all know the adage that, a manager has staff, leaders have followers, and you need followers, and you really need them during difficult times. The thing I know about recessions, and I've been through 4 or 5 of them, is if you work real hard and real smart, and you are a visionary yourself, and you're somebody that engenders trust and loyalty in your people, and you can convey a vision that's exciting for people, they'll stick with you, they'll work for you, they'll work through you through the difficult times. And importantly, you lead from the front by example.
I think that comment there about lead by the front, and I always say that, in 2008, it wasn't about I'm a director of the business. It was about I'm a part of the business, and it was about getting down and dirty with everybody else in the business and helping everybody else succeed. So that if meant going out with the person, the last person into the business and going out on a new business meeting with them because no one else could go with them, then I would go. If that meant going to see my top clients, I would go. It meant that I would do anything and everything to help my staff succeed. And it was all about. It was about being the catalyst and being very transparent with my staff to help them succeed. If they saw you doing everything that they were doing and more, then they would follow you and they would work with you. It's interesting looking at that time in 2008, looking at other leaders in the marketplace, and certainly across the business I was working with at the time, there was those that just shied away and tried to push all the responsibility onto their staff rather than shouldering the responsibility with their staff and helping them get there. So it's being very truthful, very honest, and I think it's been about very persistent, and it's looking at everything that you can do. And the big thing that I learned in that type of recession was I had to look at my systems. I had to look at everything process that we did to make sure that process was fit for purpose. I had to make sure that my staff understood what that process was and why it was important to do it. And if they didn't like that process, I had to understand why that process was, so that I could then start to rechange that process and address the balance of that process. That way I'd have staff who were more committed. And it was about finding the people in my business that loved the business just as much as me and wanted to stand in the trenches with you and fight in the trenches. And I'm pretty certain that most people on this call now will have suddenly realized that some of your big billers or some of your good billers aren't really interested in you, aren't really interested in your business. They're only interested in themselves. And they're finding it hard because now all of a sudden, okay, things aren't going their way. And they're looking at you guys to try help them out of that, where really they should be looking at how they can help you and how they can help themselves. And I've heard lots and lots of comments of people over lockdown of their bigger, just sort of throwing their toys out of the pram for whatever reason. You know, now's the time that people should be sticking together, and you as the leader, now's the time that you should genuinely lead, step to the front and really sort of march on. We have 4 minutes, Paul, so we've still got lots of questions. We've never seemed to get through all of these questions ever. So here's a question. It's an interesting question. Okay, I've got a very simple answer to it, but I'm interested in your comment. What do you think of the British Chamber of Commerce forecasting only 12% of businesses hiring in Q3?
What do I think of that? I think it's a load of rubbish. I think it's a load of rubbish. Look, it's stats and stats, more damn lies. I'm not going to worry about it. There's plenty of companies that are going to be hiring as we go forward. And, you've got examples of customers, clients that you're working with, Howard, that have got roles coming in at the moment. So have I. 12%. I'm sorry, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. So
if we look,
it's just not something I'm going to. And again, back to the point, let's identify the companies that are going to be hiring. You don't have to deal with 100% of employers. Let's work with the companies that are hiring. Isn't that more important?
So I always said in recession, a recruiter should never have a recession. There's only those recruiters that can't find a client that's buying that has a recession, whether the market's good or not. So you've got to find the clients that are buying. And I always think that what we've talked about the mindset of our leaders and what we're doing. Okay. And I read an article the other day saying, oh my God, 1 out of every 3 companies in the UK are going to be making people redundant. And I turned around and said, brilliant. That means 2 out of 3 companies aren't. They're possibly going to be hiring. So always try flip these things and start to see what's actually going on and what's actually happening. Because if that stat is true, that means 88% of the businesses are going to stand still. And as we know, if businesses stand still, they go backwards. So I think that is a genuine comment of damn lies and statistics, and is not a truthful comment. And it depends what they've taken their data from. And I always laugh at the shampoo adverts.
I was about to say that. Yeah.
The shampoo, it's 8 out of 10 people think this is great, and then underneath it says the survey was of 200 people. Well, that's not.
If you're lucky, 200 people. Tracy and I, my wife and I, laugh because when you look at these. The cosmetic adverts, 80% of women think this product's brilliant, and you look, and they have to put it up there. They spoke to 70 people in the whole world. 70 people. It's just complete garbage. So I think, look, I'm not denigrating the British Chamber of Commerce as a fine institution, but how many people did they speak to? Come on, guys. Let's not believe that only 12 out of 100 organizations are going to be hiring. It's complete garbage, and we all know it. Besides which, we'll come back to another point. People are going to be using contractors and temporary staff. So we know during the recessionary period, even though perm jobs do drop away, we're not denying that. We know there are going to be fewer jobs. We know unemployment's going to spike. So all due respect to British Chamber of Commerce, I understand their position. But we also know that companies will be taking on interim staff, they'll be taking on short-term labor. I'll bet that wasn't in their statistical survey. So come on, let's not get depressed. Let's not worry about the negative stuff out there. Stop reading it. Start thinking more positively.
And I think that's the comment, is it start thinking more positive. Then I said, if it said to me 1 out of 3 companies are making redundancies, I'm thinking, great, well, let's look at the 2 companies that aren't making redundancies and let's get straight into them.
Yep.
But then I start looking at the company that is making redundancies and go, right, okay, what generally happens when companies make redundancies? Oh, guess what? They usually cut a little bit too deep, and then 3-4 months later, guess what they're doing? They're taking on temp workers because they haven't got enough staff to deliver the products that they have. We then start thinking what the Bank of England's saying is they're still forecasting a very sharp bounce back in 2021. So how long is that 12%? If it's only Q3, then that's a very small period of time. What's it going to be in Q4? Look at the REC stats of the number of jobs that are coming live in the UK at the moment, and that is going through the roof at this moment. I think it's past pre-COVID stage. So, we've got to start to thinking what we can't believe everything that we read. Paul, that is our hour.
I know, unbelievable, isn't it? God, this goes so fast.
It does. And what I'd like to say to people is that, this format over the last 2 weeks has been very sort of pleasurable to Paul and I, because it's great to sort of get some questions. And then, as you saw there, I know David sort of dropped me an email saying that, I wasn't meant to ask that question of Paul. Well, Paul doesn't know the question, so it's always good to put him on the spot at some stages. Okay. So if you really want this type of webinar constantly, then to keep firing the questions in, and I'm happy to do these webinars. Otherwise, Paul and I will choose a topic and we'll run a topic. That's not a problem. Ask for your questions on that topic. But I think over the last 2 weeks we've answered some really good questions, and I think there's more questions to come from you guys. So Paul and I would like to thank you. If you've got any comments that you want to make, feel free to drop us a line, drop things out on LinkedIn for us, etc. It's much appreciated. Once again, guys, thank you for a great hour.
Thank you, everybody.
I look forward to seeing you next week.
Take care, everyone.
Take care.
Be careful, be safe.